What a good day. Hopefully everybody else is having a good day as well. Rob, we'll get started with the third step prayer. How about that, sir?
Perfect. That's a great way to start off. Page 63 of your big book, if you want to follow along. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Thank you, Rob. All right, we are going to be starting a new chapter today. That's chapter 7, working with others. It's an entire chapter dedicated to what we consider step 12. Before we get going here, I just to reinforce that, we're going to go to page 60 and read the top of page 60 right there. That will have us right there with basically the way that the step is being said, and then we'll go into the chapter itself. Rob?
Which word do you want me to start? The first requirement or?
No, page 60, and we'll just do the very top of page 60, step 12, and then we'll come back over.
Perfect. Okay. Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to just point out. One of them is having had a spiritual awakening. So at this point, there's the assumption that there's been some spiritual experience. Doesn't have to be the huge epiphany where you fall off a cliff and and all of a sudden things are completely different in your life, and the colors are a little brighter, and the sounds are a little mellower, and the smells are a little better, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm trying to get at is that you've been able to tap into that inner strength to some extent. You have been able to apply that higher power that you've been able to tap into, and you're beginning the journey that's going to not only keep you sober, but confirm that you are in fact a recovered alcoholic. So that's one. The second thing is that we want to carry these steps and these practice these principles in all of our affairs. And bottom line is that this is not just in your working the steps themselves. It's not just working with others in the sense of you being either a sponsor or somebody that's helping a newcomer get started. But we're also talking about everything else. So whether that be work, it be home, or it could be something else. The bottom line is that you can work these principles basically everywhere you go and everywhere you do. All right. So that's where we are. And the other part of this is that, remember, step 12 is our service step. And that's what we're going to be doing now with chapter 7. All right. So let's get started with chapter 7. Rob, we'll start at the very beginning. And you are muted, Rob. Sorry about that.
Don't you be sorry. I'm the one that's sorry. I just said some brilliant things too. We're going to be on page 89, everybody. Working with others. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they're very ill.
Right. Now, this has got a lot packed into this first passage here in chapter 7. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. We've heard a number of times when Bill was struggling at times in his past, and he would go to the hospital and start working with another alcoholic, and all of a sudden everything that he was struggling with would go away. I can attest to the fact that As soon as I started to struggle, talking to my sponsor, which is rare. We always say call your sponsor, and I'm going to kind of have a disclaimer, but I don't know why we say that so much and that so little actually happens. I mean, there are times when you call your sponsor, but I'm just saying that for by and large, it seems to me that most people will avoid calling their sponsor when they're struggling. Don't know why, but bottom line is if you pick up the phone, or if another person calls you in some manner or fashion, communicates, if they're alcoholic and you start working with them, it's amazing at how your struggles go away and you find yourself re-energized and rejuvenated with regard to your own sobriety and recovery. And carrying this message to other alcoholics, you can help when no one else can. Remember, we talked about this. This is the time when another alcoholic is going to relate to you as an alcoholic, and being that alcoholic, having gone through the things that you've gone through, and you're able to share those experiences with a newcomer or another alcoholic that might be struggling at the time. It's amazing at how much they will cling to you, in the sense that they will relate to you, and you're able to help them as at the same time you're helping yourself. And they just go on to say that remember that the alcoholics are very ill, and we're working on getting them not ill. All right, Rob.
Leo, I've got tons of stuff on this too.
Okay.
One of my favorite paragraphs in the whole book, Wes, I'm sure you can attest to this too, because I know he loves that part, and I know Bill loves this part. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. What did Bill do when he was in trouble? When he was full of depression and remorse? In his story on page 14, you know what? He got up and he went to the hospital and helped other alcoholics. It works when all other activities failed. We are mandated through this program. If we are not helping other people, we are not doing this program. What can I do for others? Once we have done this process, we carry it to others. This book is specific to alcoholics. Helping others is their primary purpose. Affirming the 12 steps by taking someone else through it. This is a process that we must continue. Okay, it's not a one and done. We don't help one other person and then we move on. It's for our life. And that's what I love about this. When everything else, when life is falling apart around you, go help somebody else. Get out of your own head. Things aren't so bad when we're helping other people. And it's the beauty of this program. We carry this message to other alcoholics. It's the same message that the first 100 had. One alcoholic helping another. And when I start reading the next paragraph, I want you to notice how many times you is used. Remember, in the book previously, it was always we, which was the first 100. Now it's you. You can help where others can't. Okay, so we are part of the you. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives.
Absolutely. And thank you, Rob, for all of that. That's excellent. And expanding on what we're talking about right now. And I think it's important to also note that life is going to take on new meaning. Imagine, and you all have probably had at least a mild, if not a moderate experience with this, and that things have begun to start to line up in some sense of order. The calamity and the debacles have gone away by and large. We all still suffer from the human experience, and so not everything is going to be perfect, and nor is this going to be perfect, but you're going to get up and things are just going to be a little bit better, if not a lot better. When you're watching other people recover, you get motivated. You become part of their recovery in the sense that your recovery gets stronger and stronger, and it actually feels better. And by that, you want and should want to go out and help even more people, because by doing so, your own recovery is going to actually benefit and become stronger. You can't miss this. It's, again, just like Rob said, if you're not doing this, then you're not doing the program. And if you're not doing the program, the risk of you going back to drinking again is going to go up exponentially. Frequently, all right? I think that a few times, you know, you might find yourself in a lull. That's the time that you should go out and look for people. You know, as a part of the Keystone Group, we are actively looking for newcomers. A number of the folks in the Keystone Group will actually travel virtually, go to other meetings via Zoom, and they'll go out and start picking people out of the audience and start asking them if they can, you know, be a part of their recovery and start helping them. So there is an active component to your recovery in this step 12 and working with others. Rob?
Yeah, and that line that I just read, there's some promises in there to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. It's a beautiful thing. You know, page 132, when we get to that, says, "We are not a glum lot," which is Art's, one of the people's favorite line. We're an odd lot, but we're not a glum lot. We have a lot of fun in the fellowship. And that's what it's all about. You know, if we came in and everybody was miserable, the newcomer wouldn't want what we have. But they see the joy in our faces, the light in our eyes, you know, how much fun we have. Do they want that? You know, of course they want that. That's what I want too. I want to enjoy life. I don't want to be miserable. So that's what this fellowship is all about. You know, you take a look, Leo's got a big smile on his face. You know, Marcia, Joanna, you know, we come in here and we're happy. Why? Because we found a new way of living that works in rough going. It works when everything else fails. Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start as an evangelist or a reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent and you can learn much from them if you wish. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim.
Right. And remember, this was written back in the 1930s. People were not nearly as connected as we are today from all of the different technologies that we have at our fingertips to be in front of each other. So it's a lot easier now to go to, and I'll just continue with the theme of a virtual meeting, a Zoom meeting. It's very easy to go to one of those meetings and find somebody that might be struggling, that's a newcomer, et cetera, and reach out to them and actually start to help them. Back in this particular time, there was actually an activity that they did in fact go. And the other thing I think is worth noting is that back then, there was a lot of folks where Bill and others would actually go to doctors and find the worst cases, and that's not so much the case anymore either. We certainly have those worst cases and those people that come to AA and are looking for hopeful sobriety and ultimately recovery. But on the other side of it, we have also the other ones that are not quite so bad or so unfortunate with regard to their drinking that we can actually get them before they become extreme cases. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have a relationship with a minister or even a couple of doctors or whatever that might be, that you couldn't tap into that and say, hey, do you know anybody that's coming to you that is an alcoholic and that's seeking guidance and help, because I'd like to be that person to come out and help them. And again, this reinforcement that you have a unique useful capability for other alcoholics. We're just trying to drive that point home. And the reason why is because experience has shown that another alcoholic can win over another alcoholic within just a few minutes, if not shortly thereafter, as long as they, and because of the relatable experiences, et cetera. And yes, the prejudice at this point in time still exists, although I would say it's not quite as bad as it probably used to be. I know when I first started trying to recover, it seemed like there was a stigma attached to being an alcoholic. And there was this kind of, look that you would get when you had admitted that you were no longer drinking and that type of thing. But I think that was more me than it was anybody else. And at this point in time in my recovery, I've found that nobody seems to mind or care. And in fact, I have no problems admitting that I'm an alcoholic and that I can't drink, which is really nice and something else. But certainly I think that there is some of that. But the idea here is that you want to kind of ease into it. You want to talk about your experiences and not so much lead off with the spiritual side of things, because that's going to have to be a part of it, but it comes later as we get down the line of working with others in the steps. Rob?
Perfect. Thanks, Leo. And the ex-problem drinker is on page 18 of the big book, which, Leo, thanks very much for mentioning that. That's a huge point. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they're dealing with a sick person.
Right. And this is a very important point. And I think that a lot of people that are recovering that want to work with others will find that if they try to work with somebody and it turns out that that person's not ready to stop drinking, they think it's their own fault, and they think that's something that they're doing wrong, and that all of a sudden that certainly this person has come to me and I've come to him and her, and we've started working on things, but what's the deal here? So you can really think in terms of, if I only try just a little bit harder, if I only try a lot harder, this person's going to get it. And all of a sudden they're going to want to get sober and they're going to want to recover. You're going to find that if the person truly doesn't want to stop, you should not waste your time with them, not waste your time at all. If you've at least gotten to know the person, they've gotten to know you a little bit, they realize that you are a recovered alcoholic and are reaching out to help them. If they at a later date decide, hey, I remember Leo and I remember talking to him, I think I'm going to reach out to him, because I think I really have gotten to the point at that point in time when I've decided I've got to stop drinking. I know that for me, it was a process. In the beginning, when I first realized that I had a true problem, I did reach out to others. I did go to AA meetings, but deep down inside, I didn't want to stop drinking at that point. In fact, I was doing all of the wrong things within that activity of going to others and going to AA meetings, because I was doing it for other people. I was appeasing other people at that point in time, or at least I thought I was. And at that same time, I was still working my mind about how I was going to hide my alcohol even better, how my drinking was going to continue, and how I was going to get not only that first drink, but that fourth drink, which was always my thing. I distinctly had that in my head. How do I get to the fourth drink? I already knew I was getting to drink 2 and 3, but it was that fourth one that I knew at that point I was going to be found out, and I had to figure out how to get it anyway. So don't waste your time on somebody that doesn't want to stop drinking at that moment. They will, in fact, come back to you if at some point in time they decide that that's what they want to do. Families, my gosh, remember we read that, why can't this person stop drinking? If only they realized what they were doing. Can't they handle their liquor? Drink beer and wine instead of hard liquor, et cetera, et cetera. We read that back before. And the fact is that a lot of people don't understand what it is to be alcoholic. And because of that, they don't have the patience for somebody that is alcoholic. So that's going to be something that, if there's any way to tap into the family, tell them to hopefully get them to be patient. That certainly is helpful. But I know for a fact that I haven't really, when I've worked with others individually, I don't really have access to their families and stuff, but nonetheless, it is something that we have to be aware of. If you have a chance, reiterating the disease and the sickness that they have with the family, trying to get them to understand it a little bit better. And by understanding it a little bit better, they will be more patient in working with the alcoholic family member. Rob?
Well said. And remember on page 96 that we'll get to a little bit in a little bit, is that we plant the seed. We don't bother the person, we just plant the seed and we hope that it takes root and they'll come back to us if they really want to quit drinking. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. Remember, the family wants them to quit drinking more than the alcoholic sometimes wants to quit drinking. They think they can still control and enjoy it at times, but they're way past that point. If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned.
Yeah, this one's really in that area where if you do have access to a spouse or better half, then great. It has not been my experience. I'll go ahead and just say that. But nonetheless, I think some of the same ideas in here are actually accessible with the person that you're working with. Have a good conversation with this person. And I'm sure that once you've shared some of your experiences, you've kind of, broken down a couple of the walls. They've related to some of the things that you've been through, and all of a sudden they're willing to start talking. Then there you go. You've got that point. So remember my thing here that I've talked about so many times. One, focusing on the individual, then persuading them through involvement. Okay, that's just a good conversation about yourself and your experiences with them, kind of relating a couple of things to that. And then you earn the right to advance. Once you get through that point, you've earned your right to advance. That's when you can start asking questions. What are your religious leanings? What is your background? How did, what was your childhood like? What was, your early life like? Depending on where they are in their life, you can kind of do it in phases. And you can ascertain the seriousness of their condition. How much are they drinking on a daily basis? And what impacts has it had on them because of, all of the things that they've been experiencing? Remember, we don't really have a drinking problem. We have a consequence problem. So there's probably a whole stack of consequences that this person has already experienced and is probably going to be able to share a number of them with you, and you can figure that out. So I think that you can just take this one paragraph here and just really focus on the individual as opposed to trying to find out from, somebody that's close to them. Now, if you get that kind of access, great. I think it's probably an incredible experience, but I have to admit, so far I haven't had that. Rob?
And remember on page 77, it says that to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and to those people around us. It takes effort to fit ourselves. And we're willing to go to that extreme. Sometimes it is wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it is better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Then let his family or a friend ask him if he wants to quit for good, and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. You should be described to him as one of a fellowship who, as part of their own recovery, try to help others and who will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you.
Yep. And one of the important things here is that I want to make sure that, you are part of a fellowship, not part of a program. You actually do the program, but you are not part of a program. You're part of a fellowship. So I just want to make that distinction because I think it's important to note here as we've just now talked about it. And, somebody that goes through a debacle, a spree, a long weekend of just drinking on top of drinking, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, at the end of all of that, they're going to go through a period of recovery. And it's at that point when most of us are most vulnerable, and I mean by most accessible. And if that's the case, then try to catch them at that point in time when they're just coming out of that and they've got some, they've sobered up a little bit for temporarily, and they're willing at that point to talk because they've probably asked, God at that point for some promises. If I don't ever, I promise I'll never do this again, just don't, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe they've made some promises to their family, et cetera. It's a good time to get to that person, because at that point in time, they seem to be most willing to listen and participate in some level of sobriety and ultimate recovery. And that's when you basically give them, the insight that you've gotten as a recovered alcoholic. And that's when you can start to introduce some of the ideas that surround what it is to be alcoholic, such as the allergy and the malady, et cetera, et cetera. Rob?
And remember that sometimes these people need to go to detox in order to wean them off the alcohol. So, times have changed. Remember that when this book was written, Dr. Silkworth was handpicking people for Bill to work with. A lot of the times, Dr. Silkworth would contact Bill and say, Bill, I got somebody that I think that, you can work with, and so now we rely on people coming into the fellowship that are coming in, and that's who we're going after, is these people that come into the fellowship. They're looking for help. They don't know what exactly. When I first came in, I thought that AA would teach me how to drink like a gentleman. Lo and behold, did I ever realize that I would never be able to pick up a drink again. It's the best decision I ever made, but I did not know that when I came in. So we have to educate these people. And that's what, that's why people armed with these facts can help the alcoholic. So if he does not want to see you, never force yourself on him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell him much about you. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. You might place this book where he can see it in the interval. Here, no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urging them not to be over anxious, for that might spoil matters.
I think really the most important point in this is that just don't push it. You can't force an alcoholic to recover. They have to actually participate in this by at least initially actually wanting to recover. All right. That is an important ingredient that the person that you're working with has to bring to the table. If they're not willing to do whatever it takes, if they're not at that point in time ready to go through the steps and the program, be a part of the fellowship, and work with you in earnest, it's not worth wasting your time, other than to just make sure that they know you're available. And again, you might give them a book. They may go, skim through it, which is great, or they may just sit it someplace and forget about it, which is not so great, but at least they know that there's something that exists that works and that can help them should they ever decide that that's what they want. So that's kind of where we are in that. And again, just like they said, no specific rule can be given. It's really a case-by-case basis, but nonetheless, that's where we are. Rob?
Usually the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly, unless he is violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of a solution.
Yeah, and this is back to what Rob said. Some people do, in fact, need to go through a detox type of program, and there are certainly those that are available. Some of them are inpatient, some of them are outpatient, some of them last for 7 days, some of them last for 30 days. It just depends on the situation, and it shouldn't be forced. Again, this is something that this person has to be willing to want to do, and it's usually a good thing if they do it. Because they're under a doctor's care and they can be observed and monitored on a moment by moment basis and to help get through this. Now, what I will say is to be ready at the other end. When they come out of it, at that point, there's usually a strong willingness to actually begin the program. And hopefully you turn that willingness into a very strong want and need. And then you've got them going through the program of recovery. But that's kind of what I would say, is just be ready on the other end. You obviously, don't go through meeting the person through his family I suppose that, interventions probably do work, is what I would call this, but in most cases, you catch a person off guard, they become defensive, and you are off on the wrong foot, in my opinion, with regard to that. And I think that's what they're trying to convey here is that you just don't want to corner a person and then gang up on them with a lot of people, because they tend to want to be defensive and resist the assistance. Rob?
When your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he is under no pressure. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed.
Absolutely. And this is what we were just talking about, catching somebody when they're just on the point of being on their way back up from a low point is usually a good idea, because at that point they are very willing to listen to what you have to say. And yeah, one-on-one is always a very private and personal experience, and one that you are not going to nag them. You're not going to make fun of them or anything like that. That's an important factor here. You've been through this, and so they relate to that. So that's a good thing. And I also want to kind of say this, and I think it's obvious, but I think it's worth noting, is that this is an excellent chapter for any sponsor. In fact, you must read this as a sponsor, because it gives you so many good directions and so many good points to consider when you're actually working with others. So what we're basically saying is Bill and Bob and the first 100, they all put this book together, and out of this book gives you all of the specifics you need in order to go out and work with others. So just want to make sure that you realize that this is a good instruction manual, not only for the individual who is recovering, but also those that want to go out and help people to recover. Rob?
See your man alone if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your own drinking career up to that time you quit. But say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell you some of his.
Yeah, and this is kind of, the old war stories. We all have them, and we all remember them. Well, most of them, I would say. But at the same time, sit down and talk about the things that you've been through. Remember, they're saying be very careful not to talk about the program just yet. All you're really doing is gaining the confidence of this individual to say that I've been through the same thing that you've been through, if not at least similar things that you've been through. And by doing that, you're going to win them over. It goes without saying that if you've got something that somebody can relate to, they're going to be drawn to you. And at that point, you've got that, that opportunity. So if he's quiet and doesn't want to talk much, then it's up to you to share those experiences of what you went through, and if you're good at humor, that's a great way to do it. If you're not good at humor, I'm going to just caveat it, don't try, because it can get a little bit awkward and goofy if you're trying to be humorous when you're not able to be humorous. At the same time, if this person is ready to talk and they want to talk and they want to share their experiences, then that's when it's time for you to quiet down, let them go, because you're going to learn so much. Remember that some of the best communication that somebody can have is by just listening to the other person. And I think in terms of our own situations and stuff, we've always been better if we've had somebody that's truly willing to listen to us, as opposed to trying to talk every time that we're trying to talk. And one experience I had, which was my step 5, my sponsor at the time wanted to share something every time I had something to share. It was constant. And I, at the time I was going through it, it took us forever to get through my step 5, in part because my sponsor kept wanting to interject and share their own experiences at that moment in time. That's the wrong way to do it. At the time, I didn't know that. I knew I was frustrated by it, but I didn't know that it was better off that I, as the person listening, should be the person listening. So I just reinforced the fact that if there is a person that's willing to share, much like a step 5. Let them share and learn. You'll learn a great deal about the person, and you can then take that knowledge and apply it very, very deftly in their recovery. Rob?
Leo, was it in Fred's story where 2 members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to visit me? They grinned, which I didn't like too much. You know, but see, it says see your man alone. And the reason you want to see your man alone is because if he's got his wife, he's got his brother, he's got these other people, they're going to interject. This is a one-on-one you want to work with a person. When you got all these other people saying, well, no, it wasn't like that at all. You're wrong. It's like this, it's like that. Too many cooks spoil the broth. See your man alone. Okay, so that you can get a relationship going instead of with all these other people interjecting their own comments. When he sees all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree. We suggest you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. If he is an alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own.
Right. And so back to, I highlighted most of this paragraph. When he sees that you know all about drinking, the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. All right. Then it says, tell him how baffled you were. Be specific about that. All right. This is where you can actually get into some details with this person. And I want to make sure that you know to be specific here. And then how you finally learned that you were sick. Well, guess what? How did we do that? We learned it through the big book. So that's at a time right now when you can introduce the concept of the big book. You may give him a big book at this point in time, but that's a point in time when you want to do that. Give him an account of the struggles that you had made to stop and how hard it was in the beginning, especially when you were struggling with, do I want to stop or not? Yes, I do. No, I know I need to stop. I've got to stop. Now I really know that I want to stop. I mean, it's a process. Okay. It is a process. And the mental twist that leads to the first drink of a spree. All right. Remember, we're talking about the malady and the allergy. And the malady is to just have no control of taking that first drink. And the allergy is once you've taken that first drink, well, here comes the spree, and then you're off to the races. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. Things like I said I'd never do it again, and then I did. All right, that's the kind of thing that I put in my notes here to kind of be to relate to. And all of us, I think, if you were to raise your hand, can say that I was at a point in time in my drinking where I said I'd never do it again, and then I did. So that's pretty much a universal statement there for us. And I think that any newcomer is going to relate to as well. Rob?
Beautiful. If you are satisfied he is a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. Don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. And be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusions. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can if he is not too alcoholic, but insist that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance he can recover by himself.
Right. You can't tell somebody that they're, if they think that they can control their drinking, you can't just come right out and say, nope, there's no way you're going to be able to control your drinking. That's just not going to happen. You're going to lose them because now you've gone from relating to the person to now preaching to the person and directing the person. And that's going to be hard to swallow on their part. No pun intended. You actually want to make sure that you're first satisfied that they are a real alcoholic. And at we've got the definitions in the book. We've got the things to look for, the things to listen to and realize, and there you go. Begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. I mean, how many of us, all of us, can say that I don't know what got me to that first drink? I know that I said I wasn't going to drink that day, and yet I did. Knew I wasn't going to drink that week, and yet I did. I knew I wasn't going to, drink that at that event, and yet I did. The last thing I wanted to do was drink, and all of a sudden I did. However, You're still at a point where you could be relating to this person more than not. I know when it says don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. I'm not saying that you don't. Again, this is one of those things that's going to be feel rather than know, and I think that you'll get it. But just relating to the book, introducing that there is a book out there that can help, showing them the book and stuff, I don't think is going to be a harm. But what they're trying to actually say here is don't take the book and start taking them through the steps at this point, because you're still having a person that's kind of on the fence. And if though they do think that they can control their drinking, there's nothing wrong with saying that they're probably going to have a hard time doing it, but perhaps they can try and let them go try it again. And see where they find themselves. If you have done a good job at this point of just being available, introducing yourself, and just relating to the experience of being an alcoholic to this person,
I thought you froze there for a second, Leo.
Yeah, something happened there. I'm sorry. Apologize. Okay. You're gonna win them over as a companion and somebody that you're gonna be able to work with probably in the future. All right, Rob, we'll keep going.
Earlier in the book, they talked about control and enjoy your drinking. That's the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. I wish I could control and enjoy my drinking, but whenever I try to control it, I'm not enjoying it. And when I'm enjoying it, I'm not controlling it. I'm off to the races. Hey, the allergy is going to get me. I have an allergy to alcohol. It just wants more and more and more, and I cannot control it. And page 34, the utter inability to leave it alone, no matter the necessity nor the wish. I am beyond human aid. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. Talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story, unless it will serve some good purpose. But you may talk to him about the hopelessness of alcoholism because you offer a solution. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of an alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is an alcoholic, so much the better. Even though your protege may not have entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well. Let him ask you that question, if he will. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself and that he live by spiritual principles.
Okay, we're making some progress here if you haven't noticed. Now they're reinforcing the things back in the beginning of this, is that keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experiences at that point. We keep talking about the fact that you don't want to rush this. You don't want to get ahead of your protege, as they say here, or in this case, a sponsee, what we call today, or a newcomer that you're just trying to get kind of indoctrinated into the program and the fellowship and what it really means and takes to become a recovered alcoholic. But you also need to talk about this seriously. I know we've said, be humorous with some of your stories and everything like that. At that point in time, we're trying to keep things on the light side. But I think it's at a point now, what they're trying to say with the progress that you're making with this individual is that it is a serious illness. It is fatal, and a lot of people do not recover, and they go to their grave drinking, and most likely they've done it prematurely. All right. So it's important to make sure that they understand how serious this is and how serious it is for them. You have been able to win them over at this point. Okay. And at this point too, they probably have shared enough with you that you kind of have a good idea of who they are and what they are. If they've been to see a doctor and they relate to you that their doctor has told them some similar things, well, then that's just good reinforcement. Now, again, be specific about yourself. Tell exactly what happened to you, all right? And talk about now, and we've talked about this, the spiritual experience, and that's something that you can use the big book to actually share with them what a spiritual experience is. And get the person to know that they have they will come up with their own concept of a higher power. And I think that's one of the important pieces here. You don't have to say God, you don't have to say higher power. You say whatever you're most comfortable with. Remember, we're not going to be apologetic about our higher power and our experience with that, but it is at this point in time that you can share with them that they get to pick what their conception of their higher power is going to be. And then emphasize the very end of this, and that is the main thing is that he be willing to believe. And remember, willing is all that we need at this point, in a power greater than himself, that he may live by some spiritual principles. All right, so that's kind of where we are. There's some progress being made. We're making kind of baby steps at this point. And again, it's going to be hard, especially for those that are just excited as all get out with their own recovery and they want to just share it with the world. You know, it's great to be that kind of enthusiasm, to have that kind of enthusiasm, but at the same time, you've got to be, you know, pull your own reins back so that you don't get too far ahead of yourself with the newcomer and or sponsee that you're working with as far as that's concerned. Rob?
Remember that Bill failed with his first few people too. And he is the founder of this whole program. So remember, when dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. There is no use arousing any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions about which you may already be confused. Don't raise such issues, no matter what your own convictions are.
All right, this one's an easy one for me as far as using everyday language, because I do not have a theological background, and so it's hard for me to speak in terms that might be too big even for my own ability to talk to. And no, I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I'm not going to be able to talk like a minister or a priest or anything like that. The point being is that you've got the big book who actually does use some everyday language and your ability to kind of explain things. So it's very important that you kind of stick to the everyday language. You don't want to lose somebody by throwing around a lot of big words. And I think that that's basically what they're trying to say here. So it makes it easy for you. You don't have to over impress a person with some of the bigger words. Otherwise, you have the tendency of potentially losing them. And let's just say that they have their own theological background and they can also use their big words. It's fine to let them use their big words and that kind of thing. That you continuing to stay in that everyday language, I think, is going to be far better for both. And remember, you're also getting something out of this experience as well. Your recovery is getting stronger and stronger also. Rob?
Your prospect may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours. In that case, he is going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. It may be an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish, constructive action. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religion. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you do, but call to his attention the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it, or he would have not drank. Perhaps your story will help him see where he has failed to practice the very precepts he knows so well. We represent no particular faith or denomination. We're dealing only with general principles common to most denominations.
Right. Very, very important message here. Just because this person might be a staunch Catholic or Baptist or Muslim, whatever it might be, this is not what we're talking about. The type of spiritual experience we're talking about is not the religious kind that you find in a church per se, all right? It's not that you can't believe in the same God or higher power that you might have in your religion. It's just saying that we're not going down that path. We might be in a slight kind of parallel path, but it's not the same path. It is religious. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's not specific to a religion. And remember, back on chapter 4, we agnostics, I've also been I feel like that it's meant for not only we agnostics, but we atheists and we true believers, all right? I think it also applies to the true believer, because a lot of people will say, well, I've got God. I already believe in all of this stuff. So I don't need We Agnostics as a chapter to read. I don't need to understand your spiritual experience because I already have it, et cetera, et cetera. Fact is, you do. And you need to be kind of aware of trying to keep them from, exchanging their religious church type religion beliefs and everything for what we're trying to accomplish here. Remember, it's a spiritual experience. It's very non-denominational, and it's very much a spiritual experience as opposed to a true blue religious type of deal. Not that you can't relate that to that, but it isn't that. Rob?
Outline the program of action, explaining how you made a self-appraisal, how you straightened out your past, and why you are now endeavoring to be helpful to him. It is important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part in your own recovery. Actually, he may be helping you more than you are helping him. Make it plain he is under no obligation to you, that you hope only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. Suggest how important it is that he place the welfare of other people ahead of his own. Make it clear that he is not under pressure, that he needn't see you again if he doesn't want to. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you have helped him. If your talk is being sane, quiet, and full of human understanding, you have perhaps made a friend. Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. The more hopeless he feels, the better. He will be more likely to follow your suggestions.
Okay. So a couple of things here, and it kind of makes me smile because I think it's an important point in time. Again, continuing baby steps and making some progress here. You want to demonstrate to this person that you've got some real experience with recovery. Obviously, you've recovered. But you also want to make sure that they know why it is so important to focus on other people as opposed to being focused on yourself. And I think in the beginning, a newcomer or a sponsee that's just starting the steps and everything, there is some focus on the individual at that point because they really need to do the work in order to get to the point that they have that spiritual experience and they can start to actually recover. But once you get to that transition point where you've recovered and you're on your own, trying to continue your recovery, and you don't, I think that, and I'm going to have a disclaimer, a lot of people will say wait until your first year of recovery before you start working with others. I'm going to say an emphatic no. Fact is once you've gotten through your first few steps and you've gotten onto you're on your feet, you've got a little bit of time under your belt, nothing relates better to a person that has 24 hours of sobriety as somebody that's got 2 weeks of sobriety. The person that has 2 weeks of sobriety cannot relate to a person that has 32 years of sobriety and recovery, but they can relate to somebody that's got 1 or 2 months of recovery and sobriety. So you, as a sponsor, once you've got a sponsee working and they've gotten through their first 3 to 5 steps or so, and they're starting to really feel good about themselves and everything, and this isn't supposed to take a long time. This is supposed to kind of have a rhythm to it, and you kind of get that, up and on step kind of feel and everything, but get them to start relating their story to others, especially the ones that have the 24 hours of experience, because it is so important. And I've watched people in a number of times, and it's going to continue to happen. The newcomer is going to raise their hand in a meeting and go, holy cow, that is a whole lifetime that I can't even relate to. And somebody trying to work with me that's got 32 years of experience. I mean, great, they've got a good experience and they probably are very good at working with newcomers and everything, but that 32 years of experience is something that's not relatable. The other thing too is to show that you're getting some real benefit out of working with this person. Remember, at the very beginning of this chapter, it says practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. This is at that point when you want to make sure that they understand that that's what's going on, what you're doing, and so that you're being completely transparent and realizing that you're getting as much, if not more, benefit out of working with this person as they are getting with working with you and their own recovery. Now, if he wants to call it off, fine, let them do it. This is, this is kind of an instructive part of being a sponsor or working with a newcomer. First of all, it's not the requirement of a sponsor is not to say you're required to check in with me once a day. You're required to do X, Y, and Z. I need to hear from you. No, you're not their mother or their father or their, boss or anything like that. You're there to guide. You're there to instruct. You're there to share experiences and show what true recovery is. If they want it, they're going to get it. And if they, but they have to want it. They have to do a lot of the work too. If it means that they check in with you once a day, let them be the one to come to that conclusion, not you the other way around. And don't be offended if they do want to call it off. If you've done all of your work and done it right, guess what? There's going to be a good chance, perhaps, that they come back to you at a later date. Otherwise, I would just say that, let them go about themselves. Maybe you weren't the right fit. Okay, that's okay too. I know that when I finally realized that I needed a better sponsor that related more to me as opposed to them, again, as I talked about my first sponsor sharing, every time I talked, they had to talk and they had to share and that type of thing. It just felt like I was, and my first sponsor had a lot of bumper sticker kind of relatable kind of stories. And when I realized that I didn't want that kind of recovery, I realized that I needed to find a different sponsor. And I have a different sponsor now, which is somebody that's very hands-off, but it was always there when I need them. All right, I think we're going to stop there and ask Bill to share a few points of his wisdom with us, please. There we go.
Oh, am I unmuted now?
You
Yes,
are, Bill.
Oh, okay. Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, Leo and Rob. Did a real good job here. This is a very, very important chapter. This is my favorite sentence here. The first sentence in this book: practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Bill is giving us instructions here on how we can stay sober. This is the treatment for alcoholism, working with another alcoholic. And if you don't do that, you're going to develop untreated alcoholism. And that's not good because you'll be on a dry drunk or a wet drunk. So, but basically, Bill Wilson said this. He said, we work with other alcoholics, not because they're alcoholics. We work with them because we're alcoholics. This program tells me I'm supposed to carry this message to other alcoholics, and there's an S on that. It's a continuous thing. I have to keep on doing it. And if I don't, I'm going to develop untreated alcoholism. This is the treatment for alcoholism. And if you notice the way Bill wrote this, on his first page, he used the word you 13 times. Instead of saying we or us, he said you. He's talking to the reader here. He's telling the person who's reading this book, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to carry this message. Because if you don't carry this message, you're going to wind up in trouble somewhere down the line. And what Bill did here, he's giving us a whole bunch of different suggestions on how to carry this message to somebody. And under all different circumstances, he's come up with as many different scenarios as he could. So he's explaining what to do. And a word of caution, don't just read this book and run out and try to 12-step people. The way that, from my experience, the way that I was taken through this, when my sponsor went on a 12-step call, he took me with him. This way I could learn how to do it from somebody that already knew how to do it. In other words, I just can't read this and all of a sudden now I'm an expert on 12-stepping people. And what we used to do when I first came in, we used to get a whole carload of guys together. We get 4 or 5 or 6 guys, and we go like to a hospital or some sort of or detox unit, and we talk to the people there. And I had a whole bunch of people that were experienced at it, that I could learn how to do it, what was the right thing to say, what not to say, how to deal with people. And basically what you what you're supposed to do on your 12-step call is tell the people how you drank. Tell them what happened to you. Tell them your experience, strength, and hope. In other words, don't talk to them about their drinking. You know, they've heard that enough from everybody that they already know. Tell them that you drank and you couldn't stop. What happened to you? How you finally got into AA and you followed along with this process, and that's what helped you. And you don't have to get all crazy with the spiritual experience and all that kind of stuff. Not right away in the beginning, because that could have a tendency to scare people off. Remember, you're just there to tell them that you're an alcoholic and you went through the same exact thing that they're going through, and you got through it and you're sober now. And they're going to want to know how you stayed sober. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get in touch with a person that doesn't know which way they're going at this point. You know, if you're dealing with them in a detox, they're still going to be a little bit fogged up, but at least they'll be willing to listen because they know that somebody that drank the same way they did was able to get sober. And from my experience, that's the best way to do it. You know, don't just read the book and then run out and try to 12-step the world. It's not going to work like that. It's better to do it with people that have already done it before so they can walk you through it and you can watch them how they did it. When you learn from somebody else, it just works better that way. That's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. All right, so let's go ahead and close things out with the Serenity Prayer, and then we'll open it up for some discussion.
That was great. Thanks, Leo. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.